Wayne at RealFixesRealFast.com. This is air conditioning season, and we're working on an '01 Chevy Tahoe. Now the driver came in and complained that the rear air was not blowing cold. He seemed to think the front air was blowing okay, but not the rear. We hooked it up to the gauges, and the low side was reading 50 plus, and the high side was reading nearly 300 psi. We also had some noise. It sounded like it might be the compressor, but it also might be a belt. So we actually replaced the belt and the tensioner because we wanted to eliminate that as any source of noise. It was really that unclear as to whether or not it could have been the noise. So with the new belt and the new tensioner, we used a stethoscope, and the noise is clearly coming from the compressor. When we checked the actual temperature of the front, it really wasn't cooling anywhere near what it should have been. With the noise coming from the compressor, using a stethoscope, and it was a clear, distinct noise inside, we knew we had to replace the compressor, rebuild the front system. But here's the point of this video. When you have a vehicle that has front and rear AC, don't forget about the rear. Now in the front, as we began disassembling this, we got to the orifice tube. Now as you can see, the orifice tube has got all kinds of debris in it. This is what a good orifice tube should look like. So we knew the front was bad. But again, with the rear air conditioning, we need to check that as well. Because one thing you don't want to do is tell the people that you need a compressor, orifice tube, receiver dryer, rebuild the front, send them out, and then they come back and say, yeah, but the rear still isn't working. Now in this situation, when the front air conditioning was on and actually cooling, we came back around because the pipes come from the front to the back, and underneath the back here, you can reach up there and you can actually put your hands on the pipes, and you can do the touch and feel method. That's not as good as actually knowing the temperatures, but you should be able to touch those pipes and actually feel that they're cold. That means you've got some interchange going back here and you're getting the hot and cold exchange. But in our case, both of those pipes were hot. Now, if you felt down there and those pipes were actually cold, but you were not getting any air blowing back here that was cold, possibility you could have a blend door problem. But in this case, we had no cooling going on those pipes. If you have this much debris in the front, you probably do in the rear as well. So we've gathered our evidence from the front. We clearly need the front. Now in the rear of this air conditioning, instead of an orifice tube, it has an expansion valve. It operates differently. It still is the control device for the heat-cold exchange. As you can see over here, this expansion valve is buried pretty deep. So you actually need to come back here and pull this out as well. You can see it just threads onto the two pipes. But then when you look inside, now as you can see in the big port in the expansion valve, it's just like we've got a clean and a dirty orifice tube. When you go to the other side of the expansion valve, you can see the debris inside there. So the debris that did actually sneak past this traveled to the rear and plugged up the rear expansion valve as well. So you see, they ought to look more like this if there was not any restriction, but if there's a restriction, it's going to be plugged up. So we've gathered our evidence from the front. We know the front system is clearly bad, and from the back, it's clearly bad. The touch and feel method on air conditioning works every time. If the air conditioning system is exchanging hot and cold air, your pipes will be cold. So in this case, all we needed to diagnose the rear air conditioning was a couple wrenches to take the expansion valve off and our hands to actually touch the pipes. But by going the extra step and checking the rear air conditioning, going to the expansion valve and getting the evidence that it is restricted and that debris from the compressor has come back here, we've saved ourselves from having a dissatisfied customer.